All right. We got Rob Barber, my personal coach. Excited to have you, man.
You're gonna blame all of this on me? That's
That's
where we're
right. That's
starting.
right. And I don't even want to get into we're gonna do this different than any interview you've ever been on because you're like my personal coach and we've been in a Bible study for like 3 years together. I want you to lead. Charlie doesn't know you, but uh but just for you, like when I hired you as a coach, Charlie hired a coach. So like on the weekends we'd compare notes, like, oh, my coach said this, my coach said that. So that was fun. I want you to lead. I don't care about your background, whatever. I want you to lead with Charlie with the story, my all-time favorite story of yours, which is when you're auctioning properties. Let me just say the buzz saw. Do you know what
Oh
I'm talking? The
man.
story I'm talking
Yes, I
about? The
do.
auction?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
for
you do.
sure.
Just lead
Yeah.
with that.
All right. So, so just I got to give a little bit of context for this because if I don't, then I'm gonna come off like a crazy person. So, 2006, I left a corporate job. My ego was huge. I thought I could do anything. I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur. The lowest barrier to entry to becoming an entrepreneur is being a realtor. And so I went the route of starting in real estate. And so I jumped into commercial real estate in 2006. 2008, I was looking at my bank statements go to zero as the market went to zero as well. So we were in tandem in that process. And along those lines, the market gives you opportunities. And I found a business partner. We started a real estate auction company and we started unwinding real estate deals. The banks had stopped, the developers had stopped, everyone had stopped. And so we needed to grease some things. And so the way to grease and bring the market back into play was to allow the market to speak. And the truest form of the market speaking is an auction. And so we started doing real estate auctions. This one particular developer that we had done a lot of work for had so I was in the Tampa Bay market at the time, and whether people may know this or not, um, there are more nudist colonies and more strip clubs in the Tampa Bay market per capita and per square mile than Las Vegas. And and when in fact one of these was a nudist colony where a developer had gone in, bought up some of the land, and built some townhouses. And that market had come to a stop. And so we were hired to come in and auction off these townhouses in a nudist colony. And
Amazing.
so, as a good real estate person, you go and you got to evaluate the product. So, we jump in the car, we go out. This is the first time I've ever been to a nudist colony before. And so, we go out to evaluate these townhouses to set some prices for them. And so, I'm walking along and looking at these townhouses, and I hear this rip saw in the background, and it's just and somebody is ripping wood over and over again. And I'm walking and looking at these townhouses, and I come around the corner and I see this open garage, and there's a guy standing there ripping trim work and finish work for his townhouse, totally nude. The only thing he's wearing is eye protection. And I'm like, that's what we're going to worry about at this moment as we're ripping into finishing wood here. This is it. Yeah. So that was an
Uh,
adventure that we had. And so anyway, there's many more stories of that, but yeah. So
that's a whole yeah, that's a whole nother level of free. Like to like in that
yeah,
moment to feel
I
so
know.
natural that like, oh, I probably should wear eye goggles.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So anyway,
That's a
thanks
great
Jimmy for bringing
story.
that up.
Great story.
I like
Oh,
it. I like it.
no.
Charlie, jump in anytime. I want so you gave a little bit of context of how you got into real estate. Now, do you want to kind of talk about like how that ended and what you're doing now, real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in the real estate market from 2006 to 2019. As I did mention, there was lots of turns and twists, but in any market, no matter what the market is, there's opportunities. And so it's just about matching those and finding the problem point and then solving problems for people. And so I did that for quite a while. And my last turn on real estate in that was we had a retail real estate company. We had moved from auctions into acquisitions. We did acquisitions for quite a while, and then we moved into the retail sector. We had secured a partner and a good friend of ours had secured the rights to Christie's International real estate as a luxury brand. They were bringing it to the Tampa Bay market. We had auctions, we had commercial. So we built this company together, and we built it basically from one office to 13 offices, 225 advisors. The year I exited, we did 917 million in transactions that year. And along those lines, what I found myself really becoming more and more passionate about was really helping people grow their business. And that's really what I loved doing, regardless of whether it was in real estate or finance or whatever the deal was. And so I decided that's what I wanted the next chapter to be. And my business partners talked me out of leaving twice. I eventually just said, this is what I'm going to do. And so that's what I do now. So I started my own coaching and consulting company, started out doing one-on-ones, and have been coaching for the last, basically really full time for the last 2 years. And now I'm beginning to grow the company, and we're going to leadership development and consulting for organizations. So that's where we're at.
I love it, man. So real quick, this podcast is called like Real Estate Unsucked. So what would you do now in this environment if you were a startup like, well, just selfishly, if you were an investor, but I know you were like more on the agent side, but if you don't mind just like kind of answering both, like what would you do now to kind of get unstuck? You kind of pivoted into auctions and then got into commercial stuff. Like what would you do now in this environment?
So, we'll start, I'll start from a retail brokerage standpoint. If I was an agent, I would go 100% into luxury, and that's where I'd move my brand. Because here's why. No matter the transaction value, it's the same work. So why would you not be doing 500 plus deals, 500K plus deals versus doing 250K deals, right? And yeah, you're going to sit and say, well, the market's smaller and those kind of things. Well, what I would argue is it's not necessarily the size of the market, it's the size of your network. And so that's where I would push the focus to, is identifying not so much the market I am in. I would much more identify where is my network, and then begin to push into that, because that's where your deal flow comes from. It's your network. It's not necessarily your market. And a lot of times where agents fall is they get so focused on inventory and product in streets and neighborhoods, and they don't spend enough time really looking at where your pipe is, and your pipe is your network. So that's what I would say. I would say that, in this particular market, if I'm going to be working every day and doing deals and needing transactions, I would focus on upping my deal value size, and that's where I would focus. That's me. So
Yeah,
that's what I would recommend.
I love
Any
that.
comment on that? What are your thoughts? Let's jam on that.
Yeah, well, I've part of the thing that comes up frequently in our conversations is I'm in the middle of a 1031 exchange where I purchased a couple of years ago several properties that now I sold, and now I'm in the process of purchasing new. But that was my mentality, was like kind of these more I purchased these sort of C class kind of as an entry level thing.
Hey, your audio is
family homes.
in and out, Charlie.
It's cutting in and out.
Yeah, now that's better. Okay.
Okay. We can edit that part out. I'll back up a little bit. Maybe I'm not close enough to my mic. Yeah. So something that comes up frequently on our show is I'm in the process of a 1031 exchange where a few years ago I purchased several rental properties that were more like C-class single family homes. And my goal was to own those for a few years, build some equity. And then, and what I've shifted to do now that I've sold those, is I'm looking to do the same thing. I'm looking to purchase, higher end homes. It's the same, now that I've kind of got my feet wet, it's the same process. But now I'm like, getting to do the same process, but with a higher level market, more in the B in a scenario or A class. Could you get any of that? Is it still breaking up? Maybe.
No, I did. I was just thinking that through. It's like, it's one of those things. It's like you begin to really, you have to really begin to look at what you're trading your time for, right? And that's really what it comes down to, is what am I going to trade my time for, and where is that value trade at? And so I hear exactly what you're saying. I get it for sure.
So what would you do, Rob, if you had some 1031 money right now? Where would you place it?
anything that I can get a cap rate over 2. um, I
Or
mean,
would
I say
you?
that facetiously. I say that facetiously, right? It's like, um, you know, what was it? I can't remember. Anyway, so it's just, where's the value? There was a post this morning on LinkedIn, and someone was talking about interest rates, and they were talking about the valuations and those kind of things, and there was this whole long dissertation about it. And really, what it comes down to is one sentence, right? Either the numbers work or they don't. And so, it can be boiled down that simply. And that's what I saw being a real estate investor myself, working with as many people that I did that were investing, had long-term investors, working with institutional money as well. It wasn't so much, what divorce yourself from the emotions. Do the numbers work or not? And is that a space that you feel like you're good in, right? Like for me, I knew I wasn't a retail person, right? Like retail to me was too difficult. It was too complex. Every lease or deal was negotiated. You could negotiate the smell of the air. It was just too much. Whereas like industrial, it was a product that was around us. It was very stable. It was there was a lot of it. There was a lot of opportunity to do value add and arbitrage, just by basically just doing some small build out, upping the power, clearing some headspace in there. So that's either the numbers work or they don't, and then you got to look at where's your primary? What are you good at? I would say.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
That's within industrial, real quick. I want to get into the transaction side, but within industrial, so this guy that I know out west, and I've heard some people have approached me wanting me to do this here. I love your feedback on it though. So instead of like taking down, let's just make up numbers like 100,000 square feet, and then just going after one big tenant, you split it up into like 10,000 square foot
Yeah.
spaces, shared
Yeah.
dock, but in the front, you've got
Yeah.
shared kitchen, shared office space.
Right.
So obviously this fits really well with like an e-commerce type business. So you've got like some nice offices up front for some like Shopify developers and things like that. But on the back, you've got the inventory. Like, what do you think of that model?
Yeah, flex space is, that's actually the first big deal that I did. It was a $10 million deal. And we took a part stamping business, an automotive part stamping company that had been around for generations. And we were hired as the broker for the developer in order to do the value add pro forma of how they should break up the spaces, what sizes, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, how much, bathrooms or no bathrooms, shared bathrooms, door heights, power requirements, all of those kind of things. And so, I think flex space, taking old outdated spaces and putting into flex space is a great value add opportunity for sure. And then even building them, that 5,000 square foot. I think there's always a good market for that.
Let's get into that. So you would be open to building if the numbers worked, flex
Yeah, if the
space.
numbers worked, yeah. If you had a piece of dirt that made sense, that you could do that. Again, one of the things that you just got to look at. You got to look at. I mean, it just all comes down to what your dirt costs are, right? When you're going into the process of building, and so you just got to look at where are those good opportunities.
What's like targeted size for a flex space that you would look for or that
So
like to
5,000.
build?
It's 5,000.
5,000 square feet?
It's 5,000, two office, one bathroom, um, and then you have like a little bit of showroom space, those kind of things. Um,
Yeah,
and then you can
I
argue
think
whether you air condition it or not. You can leave that as an option for, as you do your build out and your packages that you offer from a build standpoint, for sure.
yeah. Have you ever looked into these like contractor garages or man caves? Have you looked at all into that, Rob? or
Yeah,
Charlie?
we had some clients that did the RV thing and the car membership things and those kind of things, and they failed miserably.
Okay.
It was, but every time we worked with one of those scenarios, it was always an emotional thing. And I think you both
Yeah.
know this. It's like when you bring emotions into real estate, that is a recipe for absolute disaster. And so, you know, and that's the biggest devil for a developer is your emotions. And
Oh
you
yeah.
just you get very in love with your deal, and those things I've never seen them work.
Charlie, have you looked at like man caves or like these like boss garages, like car garages and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there's some around Florida, like around Orlando, that
Yeah.
I looked into. Yeah, but it was just one of those things that I don't know. I was like, is there really a demand for this? Like they looked like super high level. Like each garage had like its own little like office door you could go through. You know, and,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I guess maybe around Miami, there's people, with all these sports cars they're wanting to, or boats that they're wanting
Yeah.
to, I don't know, but it was very interesting to me.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
I
one
wouldn't
deal that I really did see that worked in that space was they condoed it, right? So they actually sold the units out, um, but as people began to fail out of that, the HOA was so expensive, the fees were so expensive that that's where they started to get themselves bitten was the common costs associated with the project. But I saw them make their money back plus whatever their performer was. I can't remember the number, but it was an RV. It was RV. They had space within inside it for like a lounge area and for their motorcycles and for their RV and that kind of stuff. That's probably what you looked at too, Charlie, was similar things like that.
Yeah, I'd be interested, too, since you were around the Tampa area. What about, did you ever see like, there's this, because it's a big fishing area, with the bay, like there's these areas where they have like these real tall little thin homes. They're kind of like little almost fishing huts. Like there's like a bed and a tiny little kitchen, and then a garage in the bottom, and usually a dock of some sort. Did you see anything like that, or was that
Yeah.
something to consider investing in?
There was some so there were there were some interesting developments that were done that I saw where they would build restaurant, hotel, a large pool area, and then they would build out like a almost like you could rent like cabanas. Like you had like your own, you had a place to store all your stuff, and there was a shower there, and there was a bed you could keep in there. They had these little fishing hut that they built into the community itself. And so you had this common club area. You had to be a member, you had to keep your boat there. And they sold these things as condos and people used them. I don't know the numbers behind them, but I know they worked because they were always full. So
Yeah, they
yeah.
seem like a great idea. Like every setup was really
Yeah.
unique, and they all had like
Yeah.
these decks, with the
Yeah.
dock going out, but it'd be a covered porch. They have their grills out there, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this got to be a good time renting those.
Yeah, for sure. There was particularly in I think it was Madeira Beach. There was a whole set of townhomes that were built, I've never seen another one in the area in all of Western Central Florida where you actually parked your boat underneath inside the garage in your unit. Um, but those are the only ones I ever saw there. That was pretty good. That was pretty wild.
That's cool.
dude, that's awesome. Where is there how do you like self-storage, Rob? Like specifically in like that Tampa area? Because there was several years ago before we met, so probably 5 or 6, there was just like tons of self-storage deals that came on the market in that
Yeah.
Tampa area. What
Yeah.
what caused that, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the number one, so the Marcus office in Tampa, I can't remember the guy's name, Steve. He was the number one self-storage guy, investor and broker for all of Marcus and Millichap globally. So self-storage was a really, really big deal because it was just a lot in what our market was. Um, and self-storage, I did one of the last deals that I did was a self-storage deal where I took an old existing boat storage place, was just a piece of dirt, and the guy bought it. He came from Orlando because he was putting up self-storage. Um, I think there was a boom in, but I think there was a boom in sales cycle. I think a lot of people did a lot of development. They built it up, they put it into portfolios, and then they sold it and exits. Um, Interesting thing about self-storage, and I never understood this, but every self-storage developer I ever worked with nationally, they want frontage, which is the craziest thing I never understood. But their pro formas and their studies show that self-storage has to have frontage, which which is why you see self-storage the way that it is. You see these glass front buildings on, major traffic thoroughways. It's just I don't understand it, but that's the way they write them. So
Yeah, I don't always kind of looking at it on the periphery, but I don't understand it either. Like it's but funny enough from like a lending side, self-storage has a lower charge-off rate than like people's personal houses. Like that's how good
mm,
of an investment it is. It's like it's
yeah.
got a freaking better loan performance than people's personal resident. I mean, it's
Yeah.
nuts, like the
Well, let's
performance.
talk. So let's talk that through a little bit. Let's just maybe you guys let's just scenario this out a little bit. So we're in a market right now in let's just use Chattanooga, right? And so there's a lot of these secondary, tertiary markets like Chattanooga that are just booming, right? So you have all of this development, you have all this growth. You only have so much land. You have all these people moving in. A lot of people are downsizing. Um, you know, where would you put the self storage here? Where would you?
Yeah,
I mean, is there a need for it? I mean,
yeah, so my friend, I'll try to be general because but yeah, I have a friend who he he bought some land in the middle of um it's not prime location. It's not like it's just in the middle of kind of nowhere. It is surrounded by like residential houses, but it's not I mean it's frontage, but some like sea level road, like not not like and there's not a lot of development going on around this, right? I mean, he's already got a takeout letter to make like millions and it's
mhm.
not even leased up yet. And it's like, I don't know, man. I just at the end of the day, I don't have enough guts to do it. I really don't because it's kind of like a hotel to me. Hotels are so expensive to build, and at the end of the day, it's just a big building with like what I know both of y'all go to Atlanta. This new hotel's being built down in Dalton. I mean, they're really nice looking, but I'm like, that's just so risky to me. Just throwing that up, hoping some families passing through stay there. And I know they've done studies and stuff, but I don't have enough guts to throw down some millions of dollars on concrete and steel and it just sit there. I don't care what the market study says, but
Charlie, what's your take? Are you a specialist, or in terms of your assets that you like to own, or are you just a hey, if the numbers work, it looks good, if the cash flows right, it's good for me. How do you go
Yeah.
about it, Charlie?
Yeah. So I'm still pretty new. Like I've only been doing this for about coming up on about 3 years now. So everything's still kind of newer for me. So right now, yeah, it's very much I'm looking at cash flow. I'm looking at like gross monthly income, and then the market in the area. One of the things I've found I frequently do. So right now I'm very focused on single family homes,
Yeah,
and I'm shifting more to like the build to rent
yeah.
model. But one of the things I found myself doing when I'm looking at property is I Google how close either a Walmart supercenter
Yeah,
or a Starbucks is.
yeah,
And because my thought is, well, they're throwing stuff up left and right. They're doing all the data and the research. They know if there's enough people around to
right.
support, their sales, then I know, well, that's probably a good area to be
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, it's an interesting time for the single family market thing, right? It's like, you have all these people that bought their homes at 2 and 3%, right? And then you have all these people that bought in the last 3 years that bought at a price where they can't sell or they're going to have to downsize. And then you got this entire middle market that's not going to see 2 and 3% and not going to see a down price again for the next 10 years or whatever the number is. So what are they going to do, right? I mean, this it's just a really interesting time to be in that single family build to rent space. Um, just because
Yeah.
it's not even that it's going to be a choice for people, right? That's their
Right.
option. That that's
Right.
that's it.
Yeah, it feels a little more foolproof. And something you said that I'd love to dig in at some point. You talked a little bit about like the emotional side of money. And so for me, being newer in this, historically, I've talked not on the show, but with Jimmy, over dinner one time, one of our conversations just about like my relationship to money and how historically I don't have a good relationship with money. Like emotionally, I don't.
Right.
I don't understand it. Like I was afraid to spend money. I was just debt seemed really bad to me. So I've had this sort of like emotional relationship with money that has grown a lot. And so I feel like for me to get to the point where I can make decisions about a commercial warehouse or a storage unit and these big
Right.
numbers with lots of zeros behind it, I need to
Yeah.
be in a different place emotionally with money, if that makes sense, where it's not such an emotional thing, but I can focus more on the data and rely on more on logic and insight.
Yeah, Charlie, and your mic's coming in and out, so maybe you can pull the mic closer to you or what. So, I so the man, I feel you. It's like that emotional side of money. Um, yeah, I get it. Like it's funny because some of the most successful people that I saw in real estate, they've all been broke a lot. you know, but they're not afraid of it. It's a very interesting thing is like, that emotional side of money. And so, um, the way I always got past it was like, I just lived in first principles, right? So like, if I didn't understand it, then I just didn't do it, right? So if I can't understand it, then, and it's not a problem with me, it's not a problem with the deal. It's just I'm not going to fix me. These are my first principles from investing, and I'm just going to stick to them. And I had to get away from that FOMO, right? I had to get away from that fear of missing out, and so I was taught a long time ago, if you got to look at real estate as baseball with unlimited pitches, right? You just got to go up to the plate and you wait for your pitch, and you don't have to wait just for the limit of three, right? You just gotta kiss enough frogs, or, you know, kind of go through that process. So,
But how do you like, do you have any exercises though to like break through emotionally to like I usually Charlie used to work for Dave Ramsey, so he's got some PTSD from that. That's my words,
yeah,
not
for sure.
Charlie's.
Right on. Yeah.
And we always somehow end up picking on Dave Ramsey on this show, because I don't know, it's just for random reasons. But do you have any like exercises or like thought processes to go through to kind of like, I don't know, because it seems like the people that me and Charlie meet are like they just have a like maybe not even going from 0 to 1 rental, but more like 1 to 10, or like, just kind of how to get through that emotionally and like just
Yeah.
coaching wise. Like any thoughts on that?
Yeah. The partners. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the only way that I've been able to see people break through that that mental barrier is you got to share the risk. And but it's not just the money risk, it's the mental risk, right? It's as people, and this is real estate or not real estate, we're talking to ourselves 4,000 words a minute, right? In order to speak that, it would take an hour. So think about that for a moment. You're talking to yourself 4,000 words a minute. Do you think you could talk yourself out of just about anything? You could, right? You
Sure.
can. And so the way to counteract that is you have to be able to communicate verbally and written. And the way you do that, especially in deals, is to not go alone. Now, you can either do that with what you both have done by having a non-equity partner like in a coach or a mastermind where there's nobody in your pocket, but you guys are all, commonly yoked together doing those kind of things, or you can have some equity partners. but finding a partnership, finding a way where you can communicate and have some either non-equity or equity partners to move through your journey and your deal is the way you're going to get past it. That's where the breakthrough is going to happen.
Okay, that's good. So what tell us about your, maybe it's a good segue to like your coaching business. Like what are you focused on? You said you're focused on maybe like companies now. Like what all are you offering right now coaching wise?
Yeah, so as far as coaching is from a one-on-one standpoint, it's people that are stuck. It's like people that feel like they've plateaued in that moment and they're trying to figure out what's next, either to unlock where they currently are or move into whatever's next in that standpoint. So I work with men traditionally, men, mainly, and just helping them take that next step in whatever it is. And so again, it goes back to that a lot of times as high potentials and high performers, we're running as solopreneurs, and that's whether you're an entrepreneur working in a company or you're outside of a company. And so we have friends and family, we have people that are close to us and those kind of things, but those people we're not sharing with what we really need to do. And so having a coach is really good. So the one-on-one standpoint, I'm working with people that are really just stuck and they know that they need to be, not that they need to be, but they know they can do more. It's either more in their current role, they want to move to that next promotion, they either want to move into that next department, whatever it is, they want to grow in their sales role, whatever that is. And then people that are actually thinking about making total shifts in where they're going. So that's from the one-on-one standpoint. Then for organizations, I'm doing some executive coaching where I'm working with individuals that are in succession. They're on a plan, they're moving forward. They just need to really, get some more discipline and consistency about how they're performing. And then from organizations, I'm doing new leader development. I'm sure you guys are seeing this across the board. Organizations are trying to hire like crazy, but they're spending no time on developing their internal people. They're 10xing on recruiting because they feel like they're drowning and that's where the fire is, but when in fact nobody's closing the back door. So they're moving all these people in, they're spending no time, upping their dysfunctional teams or growing their leaders. And so I'm doing a lot of work right now focused on organizational development around leaders and teams. Yeah. So it's an interesting
When
time.
that's awesome. So when people are stuck like professionally, what's the common denominator problem that you see?
It's mainly self-sabotage and imposter syndrome. It's a combination of both of those. It's I don't think I deserve that next yet. And because of that, and this goes specifically for men because I'm a guy, so this is really what I can speak to mostly, is that that fear of judgment. If I do take that next, I'm going to go ahead and self-sabotage because I don't want to be judged.
Yeah,
So it's the imposter syndrome, feeling that I'm not prepared for what is next. And then also that I'm going to then continue, I'm going to self-sabotage that process because I have fear of judgment. And so, and the only way to get past that is to have a plan and have some sort of system and process in place in order to squash those, because you're never going to get rid of it, but you have to be able to squash it. And so that's specifically what I work on, is developing plan and process to move people through that. Yeah.
that's awesome. I think I told you this, Charlie, but what I liked the best about Rob's program is like it was a defined 12-week, you know what I mean? It was like just this well-defined program. It's just like going through anything. There was no, that's why I don't know. I don't like anything that's just like, I'm just going to sign up monthly and whatever. Like, hopefully it ends up as the best. But I like this defined program of like, here's the input, here's the output. So it was very helpful for me. What We're not ending here, Rob, but I'll forget to
Yeah,
ask. If I,
for sure.
where can people find you?
So CEO for Life dot Academy. So on the website, and that's just the easiest way. I have all my contact. LinkedIn, obviously, it's a great way to connect too. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Robert Lee Barber.
All right, good deal. What, Charlie, you got your mic working back?
I think so. I've got it closer. I don't know
Oh,
if we're
That's
sounding
great.
better.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
lot,
Good.
lot better, lot better. Good.
Good.
All right. Do you care just to jam with us on some real estate stuff, Rob?
Now let's talk. Yeah, no, it's an amazing time. I mean, real estate.
Yeah.
It may feel like things are slowing down or grinding or even stopping. Just because 6% rates, 5% rates, whatever. there's still deals. I mean, people still have to sell. People still need to transition. There are the Charlies of the world that are moving out of it and moving. They got 1031. 1031 has a deadline. Things need
Right.
to move, right? Money has to move. Money can't stay in place. It's got to work. And so there's always going to be deals for sure.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I don't know. Everybody's just I'm pretty bullish. I'm very bullish long term, but in the immediate term, there's definitely reasons to pause and just kind of take stock and stuff. It's just I guess a lot of people there's just a lot of inventory coming, so it's just we'll see if that gets soaked up or not. It's like I don't think anybody has a crystal ball for the answer for that.
Yeah, it goes back to, it's like we talked about at the beginning is if the numbers work, then the deals they'll happen. It's just a matter of everyone's got to come to terms with what those numbers are, right? And that's what everyone's trying to figure out too. And I'm sure both you and
Yeah.
Charlie are doing the same thing. What's the right number, right?
Yeah.
Where do we go now for the next 5 years or whatever the number is, where we feel like, even if there's a little bit of reset, it's not a full fall off. And
I am amazed, and this is my ignorant optimism. I am amazed, and I don't know anybody like this, but I've just seen people on Twitter getting out of deals because, like, your loan rate went from 4% to 5%, and I'm like, that's insane that kills a deal for you. Like, I mean,
yeah,
that's just nuts that
yeah,
you were underwriting that tight. But again, that's just
yeah.
kind of I don't hang around those type of people. I don't, so that's just that is but
Well,
I've
what
got
do you
to
guys think? Let me get your opinion on this, because so even though I am out of real estate, quote unquote, because so Charlie, I purposely decided that I let my license go. If I would have stayed a little toe in real estate, I would have fell back into real estate, right? So like I'm the kind of guy, like I've got to burn the boat and so I can stay focused, right? And so I did that way, but I am still very curious and I follow the markets and I like to talk about it. What do you guys think is going to happen with this VRBO thing? Because, you know, I don't think I could go in the grocery store and not run into five people that have a VRBO, right? And so, and they bought at these numbers. Whoever knows, I don't know. I feel like this is on shaky ground. What do you guys think about that market in general?
I the the shorter answer is yeah, I agree with you. It sounds and it feels like bubblicious, bubble territory, but I know, so obviously some properties I've built, I lease to Airbnbers and they turn around and they Airbnb it. And just for me, like if they fall out, like I can do the long-term leasing, I can do whatever. Um, I don't know, so I'm
But
not
you
that worried
underwrote it
about it.
that way. But you underwrote it that way because you knew better, right? I mean,
Right. Right. Yeah. Again, it goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier about the interest rate thing. Like it's crazy. It's mainly them that are pulling out of deals because their rate went from 4% to 5%. I'm like, if that if that caused your deal not to work, like that's crazy. And I do a place that have the cabin in Blue Ridge and our manager was telling us like, yeah, there's these people who last year paid like double what I paid, and their cabins aren't leasing because it's a new cabin, so it doesn't have any reviews, and it like
right.
there's gonna be again, I don't think there's gonna be like foreclosure crisis, whatever, but they're gonna unload this thing. Like that gets old quick. So
Hmm.
I don't know. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah. Charlie, what's
Yeah.
your take?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something. So I'm actually under contract on a property right now that I'm still kind of like, do I Airbnb this or do I rent it out? And I go back and forth. Like I'm like, if we rent it out, it's guaranteed. You know what to expect. But with renting it, there's a bigger upfront cost. I mean, with Airbnb, we'd have to furnish it, we'd have to theme, and like got to take professional photos. You got to really, and then it's a business, right? You're like managing
Right.
people who are
Right.
staying there. You're responding to feedback on reviews. there's lots of communication and things that go back and forth. So, I like, I get it. I do think there is like the millennial generation are really fixed on experiences. And I think it's more important to experience multiple cultures, diverse areas of the country, and more important than having, a mortgage that's, building equity over time. And I think, there's just a different value shift there. But I wonder with my kids if it'll be the same, 10 years from now, if that's going to be the same value or not. There's all these regulations that are happening right now where cities are kind of confused. Like, what do we do? We're disturbing neighborhoods and it's harder for people in neighborhoods to build relationships because the people are in and out all the time, so there's these different, arguments and different sides of it, which is interesting. I mean, I think there's always multiple angles and perspectives around real estate in general, as far as people who are trying to build a home versus people who are trying to build a business. But I think it's really an interesting topic because I think it's still a little too early to tell. It really hasn't been around that long, and we haven't seen, this style of business go through a recession, go through, a big dip in the housing market. And so, whether or not we're going to have one in the near future at some point, eventually, it'll happen. And I wonder if it's stable enough to endure it.
So I'd like both of y'all's opinion on this. Two things, because I like I said, Rob, I get it. It feels bubblicious. Everybody I know wants to buy an Airbnb. Like literally everybody I know. I can't. Right. I couldn't tell you somebody who doesn't want to buy one. Right. So obviously that's a sign. Right. Here's your sign. That's just Fox what they would say. So, but kind of counterbalance that, and I like both of y'all's opinion on this. One, we're raising an entire, Rob, I think you've mentioned this at Bible study, like your daughter or one of your daughters, like we're raising a whole generation is coming up. And when they go and look to vacation somewhere, they don't look at hotels. They just look at Airbnbs. Like they don't like their first, and that's not our thoughts. Like our thoughts are like, let's get on hotels.com. Is there a Four Seasons there? That kind of thing. They're like, it's like almost like an anti-status symbol. It's like they're kind of repulsed by staying at like a Ritz-Carlton or Four Seasons. Like they want boutique, something cool, a very Instagrammable, like a Four Seasons and a Ritz-Carlton are not Instagrammable experiences versus like a beach house. Like you can do a lot of cool things and make it Instagrammable, TikTok worthy, you know what I mean? So that's one. The second was just I don't know, the Airbnb as itself, like, so I've only seen this like once. It's on Netflix. Have y'all seen that Chef's Table TV show?
No,
It's I've only seen it like once, but it's just a TV show about like all these like random chefs around the world, and they're doing like how they cook, and like just it's very unique, like sushi people in Japan, you get the idea. Sure. Well, this developer that I met with last week, he went to Mexico City, and this is so cool. He stayed at this random place that happened. He didn't even know it, or his wife maybe booked it and he didn't know it. He stayed at the guy that was on Netflix had his own, Chef's Table on Netflix. He has an Airbnb in Mexico City. Okay. So you stay there, and he's got all these junior chefs training underneath him. So they make you breakfast, and it's like the best breakfast you've ever had times 10, right? Sure. And then on top of that, at nighttime, he gets you in to all of the top restaurants in Mexico City at like the table, because you're staying at his Airbnb. Like, all these places, I mean, it's Mexico City. You have like a year-long waiting list. It's like, nah, you're going in and you're sitting like at the table and all that. So he was like, and of course it's like, he said it was way better experience. So he stayed there for like half the time in Mexico City and the other half in like a like St. Regis, and he was just like, dude, the St. Regis was like, it's like is what it is. And it was like, but this thing was in this cool neighborhood. I mean, you felt like a local, you had
Right.
all these
Right.
top chefs in the world. Like, so like all that to say, like the service side, like I know they've tried kind of on the service side of like doing like tours and stuff like that, but man, that's going to be tough to compete with for like a hotel. So what are y'all's thoughts on that?
You know, I think that, I mean, hotels are going to now cater 100% to business, right? They're basically going to be B2B
Yep.
I mean, right? I mean, so that's, I mean, because that's just where it's at, right? I mean, so that's going to
No,
be
I
a
was at the,
constant.
sorry for cutting you off. I was at the Westin last night
Yeah.
at this fundraiser thing, and it's 100% businesses there. I mean, like
Yeah.
I was there for a
Yeah.
business thing. There was a big conference room that was unloading. It was all the
Yeah.
distillers in the southeast. They were, and then you can just tell all at the bar. It was all business to business sale. I
For
mean, it was
sure.
all businesses. Yep.
And that's the way I look at the hotel industry. It's like it's B2B, right? So the B2C piece is just, I think, that's just, I mean, that's for the, that's for the Browns Ferry Roads and the Cummings Highway hotels of the world, right? And so the
Right.
B2Cs, right? The people that are just
Yeah.
traveling through, need a place to stop or whatever else, right? But I think in general, that's my take on the hotel industry. But I agree with you. I don't know, Charlie, what's your take? I think experiences are, a big part of what people are looking for. Um, I went to this, so I'll lead this back to a little bit of my organizational HR side of things that I'm doing. I went to this conference, or I went to this talk a couple weeks ago, and specifically talking about the different generations. And so I think that would be a very interesting thing to do for real estate professionals, is to really dive in and look at the differences that generations have, because their needs and their wants are dramatically different. I mean, the 25-year-old. I mean, there is a major difference between what a 25-year-old wants and a 45-year-old wants. And to say a 25-year-old doesn't have money now is foolish, right? And so, I love where the discussion's kind of going about just understanding generational expectations and what they're looking for and those kind of things, because it does play into it. Is like, you know, hotels should be focusing on those B2B type experiences, and then, from the other side, just having experiences. I think it's important. I don't know, what's your take, Charlie?
No, I think that's great insight. I've started to notice a trend even in like apartment buildings and condos where there's more of an investment on like, so my wife used to be a leasing agent, and like the apartment building that she leased for, like they had their own like dog doggy cleaning station, pools, their own like uh rooftop bars. I mean, we're starting to see things that the amenities that cities offer now are trying to be pulled all into one containing area. And I think that trend's gonna continue. And that's right. Like there's gonna be more of a divergence between what is B2B versus what is consumer driven. Yeah, I don't know. That's really interesting to think about. I'm constantly, I've got 3 kids, so uh, the oldest 2 are venturing into the teenage years, and so starting to play around with the adulthood attitudes. And I'm always kind of imagining like what are they going to be like when they're adults, and what are the things they're going to enjoy. And you're right, like they're asking totally different questions, they're valuing totally different things
Right.
than I did at their age. And I think it's going to be, I don't know. Like I wonder, will my kids ever even want a home, or where there'll be a thing like I want to live in this side of the city for a while, and then I want to live on this side of the city, or maybe I want to change cities. And so like you'll see shorter and shorter terms on where they want to be and build their family. Whereas used to, it was all about find a home. Where do you want to raise a family? Plant your roots and grow there. And now it's like, oh, why limit yourself to that? You can go anywhere. You can work from anywhere now. You can
Right.
travel. You can, you don't need to be tied down to one single area.
What do you think about the value of home ownership then? I mean, because you've got the Ramsey indoctrination DNA somewhere still within you, right? Like, what would you advise? Like, what would you advise? I mean, what do you say now? It's like, you got Cardone on one end, right? And you got Ramsey on the other end, right? And so, I mean, what is the general consensus? I mean, what would you advise those kids? I mean, if they're going out right now and, say they're all graduating, would you advise them to go for home ownership?
I mean, I certainly would. And then, I would encourage them, there's the whole house hacking concept of like buying a duplex, living in one side and renting out the other. Like
Right.
maybe there's some approach there that I would encourage. I feel like for me, just owning things gives you opportunities, and
Hmm.
owning assets now broadens my options. And so, yeah, I would encourage them to maybe not necessarily think about it as in you need to buy a home and stay in it for a long period of time, but encourage the idea of investing in assets. And like, there's people making money off of your desire to move around and travel around. So there's got to be a way
Right.
you can hack this and maybe
Yeah.
maybe buy a multifamily home, stay in it for a little while, then go travel and rent it out. And now you've got multiple
Right.
streams of income that are now supporting your ability to travel around and experience new cities.
I love
What do
that.
you think about the value of homeownership, Rob?
Yeah, I think I think there's a tremendous value in home ownership in the fact that you never let the last one go unless you have to, right? So as you move, I think, I think you can look at it just like Charlie said. It's like, so I'm looking at my daughter, she's got a condo now, and and her conversation, she's been there a year and she's already thinking like, well, maybe I want a house, and she's thinking through those terms, and I'm like, you need to stay put long enough where you have enough equity that you can then go into that house, but keep this one and rent it out, right? Begin to build on
Yep.
that buying over time to where you're not like where it was for me. I wish I would have done that, because I'd have I'd have three houses in Palm Beach Gardens. I'd have a house just outside of Dallas, and I'd have a house, just outside of San Francisco right now, if I would
Right.
have kept them, right? But I didn't, But I mean, I just didn't know any better, and I just parlayed into the next thing and next thing, and I always went for the bigger and best of the next instead of just maybe
Yeah.
staying equal to what I was before and then keeping what was behind me and leveraging into the next. I love your thought process, Charlie, on that. I wasn't smart enough to know that.
Yeah, same.
All right. Charlie brought up apartments, so we got to talk about WeWork.
Apartment.
Adam at the WeWork news. What's y'all's thoughts? Did you get in on that, Rob? Did you invest with A16Z? Get in on that $1 billion transaction?
I mean, how can you give that guy any money? I don't know, but you
Yeah,
know,
I
yeah,
mean, this goes to show, sorry to interrupt. This just goes to show what a weird world we live in, where
Bro.
this guy's a multi-millionaire and he never did anything. Like he never created anything that worked. WeWork didn't
yeah.
work until someone else took
It not
over
only
it.
didn't
So they
work,
built it.
it was an absolute black hole.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly. And he still
it
came out
was,
of it a millionaire. It's
I
weird.
know, I know, I know.
Sorry,
Apartments
go
are,
ahead.
I've said facetiously about Grant Cardone. Man, I think that guy I think he's helping people. I think there's a lot of good stuff that he's doing. And I love the idea of cash flow, buying cash flow, and it just makes sense, and if you can make that happen, you know, I just think it's great.
All right. So Charlie mentioned well, before we'll leave after this, but the apartment thing, it was fascinating, Rob. We'd go out on double dates, Moncrief and Gans, and just listen to Charlie's wife talk about it was a really nice apartment complex off Main Street, and just the type of people that rent there, it was not at all what I expected. I mean, it was Rob, it was people like your age that just they had sold a business, wife had passed away, maybe they got divorced, and very successful people, like just like yourself. I mean, very that are just like just didn't want to own a house. You know what I mean? Like didn't want to cut the grass, didn't want to deal with anything, just wanted to keep it light. And it was just like I don't know. It's just very, it's very interesting. And then I do think it's smart on the. I don't know. I want to know more details on like how the transaction was structured with like owning assets because with the ad going back to the Adam Newman thing because there was a guy it was on Twitter that had went back looked at all their funding rounds and if they had just actually bought the buildings, you know, they raised hundreds of millions of dollars. So if they had just went and bought the buildings and literally didn't even lease them, like literally just like kept them as if WeWork would have worked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they would have just
Right.
used
Right.
that money to
For
actually
sure.
buy real estate.
Right.
So part of
Right.
me is thinking like that's how he's thinking now. It's like he's buying these apartments at like whatever, a two cap, I'm sure, two or three cap, but he's gonna layer on services to like juice up the revenue. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how that
Yeah.
plays
I
out.
think, when people can write those big checks, you look at what the heck was it? You guys watch the All In podcast?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this past week they talked about the gosh, what is it? What was the big collapse? That investing company. It was a venture capital company. Gosh. Anyway, what they talked about is the structuring of these venture capital companies and these assets. When equity companies come and they give someone a certain amount of money, right? You have these burn expectations where you have to deploy a certain amount of money within a certain period of time, and that causes you to really be loose on your underwriting and the fact that if you don't use it, you lose it. It's kind of like it's kind of like how the government is. Their end of the year comes. It's just like these assets and these equity companies and these structures. They force the money to outflow, and so you're going in and you're looking at a deal that may only need 50 million and you decide to give it 100 million because you've got to meet by next week, you've got to deploy 100 million. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these things play out. But I think they're playing loose. I think that whole thing is loose in a lot of ways, and it just doesn't sound right to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do I know? I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars. Obviously, what the heck am I talking about? But at the same time, I think there's certain truths that I know,
Yeah.
and when it feels funny, it's funny.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't need to have hundreds of $1 million to look at something and go, oh, that doesn't feel right.
Well, especially, just from the banking side, one of your first rule, I mean, it's not even have doesn't have anything to do with financials or anything. Anybody that wants to like just switch industries and then like give them a loan, it's like that's a bad loan. Like that's you don't ever do that. Like that's a bad deal. If
Yeah.
Charlie or you wanted to come to me and like, hey, I need a $500,000 loan to go buy a concrete truck. I'm going to get in the concrete business. I'm like, not gonna happen with me. You know what I mean? Like I'm just y'all don't know how to spell concrete,
Oh
much
man, I
less
thought we were friends.
no, no, not gonna happen. And you look at like the biggest problem I saw, Rob, is like everybody's like always like a quasi real estate guy. I was like, no, he's not. He's like an office guy, not really even that. And then now he's doing multifamily. It's like, as you know, both of y'all know, like that might as well be Chinese. If I knew Chinese and
Right.
Greek, and it's like, oh, well, he knows Spanish too because he knows
Right.
Chinese and Greek. It's like
Sure.
that has nothing to do
Yeah.
with each other, like office and multifamily.
Yeah,
So
and
I don't
the
know.
other thing
That
that's
was,
interesting about that too is like that market is so saturated with high potential and talented organizations and people. It's like he's stepping from like he's over here on the Chattanooga Lookout stepping onto the Yankees, and like everyone else on the team is just like batting 500, right? And it's like I don't know, it just seems how can you compete? How can you move into that market and that space and compete with, Vanguard and Blackstone and BlackRock and, all of these other organizations that are out there? I just feel like you're going to get your lunch taken.
that's That's a really good point that I didn't even think about. Is you're right. Like he's going toe to toe with like they're the best
Yeah.
of the best already. And like and oh, by the way, Rob, they've been doing this for like decades. So they've kind
Right.
of seen a lot. And it's not like they're just, those guys are smart. I mean,
Yeah.
they know how to juice
And
their own
listen, there's a
revenue.
place for disruptors, but I don't
Yeah.
know, man. Like, yeah.
Well, what's interesting, have you heard of Darwin, Rob?
Mm-mm, no.
It's like I'll send you the podcast. This is Chris Powers. He interviewed this guy. He was like the number three employee at Instacart and ramped it up, went public, and now he's doing property management. Fascinating podcast. I'm like, oh great, another Silicon Valley guy going to take over property management. This will end well, like it always does. But this guy's really smart, and I liked his approach. His approach was the opposite of everything Silicon Valley normally does. I like
Mm,
his first thing was he just hired a property management company, like, and like, they got, and when they like, they're getting into Atlanta right now, normally it's like, oh, let's sign up a bunch of tenants, then figure it out. And his is the
right.
opposite. It's like, I get three subcontractors for everything I need. I got three lawn guys, three plumbing companies. I show them the volume. Can they keep up? And then, okay, the one side, then they go after institutional products. Like it's just, 100 unit and up apartments or
Right.
he's going after the build to rent community, which is genius because apartment people aren't going after it ignorantly enough. So he's going after that, but he's also like he's building custom software for his, and he's also like he's got the data. So the biggest thing that needs to be disrupted is like with Charlie was talking about, like his wife was a leasing agent. It's like people just treat these tenants like just like whatever. It's just a tenant. They just pay. And it's like,
Well, you think
no, you've
about that
got
from the
better.
single think about it from the single family thing. So like as we're brainstorming here a little bit, right? So like when I was doing all that work for Blackstone, right? They bought all these houses, Charlie. Like I mean, I literally was like I bought hundreds of houses for them, right? And this was in Florida. And 6 months into working with them, um, we get noticed no more pools. We're like, no more pools? What are you talking about, no more pools? So we get on this conference call and we're talking to these people and they're like, yep, no more pools. We're not doing any more pools. It's killing the expense ratios, blah, 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 blah. And when in fact, everything that we bought now so far, we're going to go back and we're going to backfill every pool and we're going to close them all out. Like, that's like, so you think about that mentality, right? And you think about running these huge single family portfolios and you think about this Instacart deal. There's got to be some opportunity to go after these single family portfolios and go in on a 3 month basis and do regularly quarterly maintenance to make sure that all this stuff is up there. Because that's so like these multifamily properties, this, Charlie, like they want to take your trash out every day. They want to do all they want to do all these things because they realize that it's saving them in the long run, right? That they're not having all of these issues surrounding the property itself because they're actually going in and doing them up in front. Wonder if that's going to happen for these single family portfolios. Wonder if they're going to have like a requirement every month that they come in and like they're constantly doing the work ahead of time instead of after the fact. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought.
Charlie, you got any thoughts? We were
No, I'd love to just because I'm getting to know you, Rob. Like, what? Just a few fun things. Like, what was the first job you ever had?
Oh man, first job I ever had is a the first job I ever had. I forged my birth certificate to go work at McDonald's. I was 14. You had to be
that's
15.
awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
How
Yeah,
old were
Awesome.
you?
two reasons. One McDonald's was in the mall, and there were girls there.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Those are two great reasons.
Right? Yeah, and it's funny. Years later, my mom passed away a couple years ago, and but years later, my mom called me and she goes, So I need to tell you something. I've found your birth certificate, and I think I told you you were born during the wrong year. She had forgot that I had gone and, and doctored my birth certificate. So she actually had like a whole day where she was worried about telling me that I was born in the wrong year. So anyway,
Did you
So
tell her?
yeah, I'm like, Mom, I'm like, I doctored the birth certificate. It's like, again,
Oh
you
my
not remember
gosh.
this? Anyway, yeah,
so you may
How
have actually
no,
been 15 after all when you
I
got your
know.
job.
Yeah,
how
man.
long did you work at McDonald's?
I got fired.
No.
So, but so I worked at the one in the mall, and then I went and worked for because they're obviously the ownership, they have franchising. So I went to work at another store, and then I worked there until I got a car, and then when I got a car, I went and worked at. So being in South Florida, they have these huge retirement communities, right? And so in the retirement communities, they have like restaurants inside where everyone gets their 3 meals. So I went and waited tables there. It was awesome. So I went and waited tables and did that for a while, and so
Yeah,
that was that second job. It was a good job.
that's cool.
Yeah.
You still,
Always miss.
yeah, do you still feel like the Southern Florida is a great place to invest? And because I know Florida's been kind of wild over the past couple of years.
Yeah. I don't know, Charlie. What do you think? So I mean, with price, I mean, it's just that there's demand, and how can you argue with demand, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And and then again, not being emotional. Like I would not raise my family in South Florida. Like it doesn't appeal to me. I don't like it. I'd love to visit, but as far as living there, it's just not my place anymore. And but you can't argue with the demand. I mean,
Mhm.
and it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it's going to slow down. Within an investing cycle of 10, it doesn't seem like that it's going to slow down. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel similarly, but yeah, I've actually in the process of building a couple of homes down around the Cape Coral area
Oh yeah,
right now, and
yeah,
actually just put a deposit down on a piece of land a little further north of Fort Myers.
yeah. Jimmy, did you send Charlie that condo development that was guaranteeing an 8% cap?
No, no. Tell them about it. Yeah.
So I get this flyer, and it's a brand new condo development. It's got all the concierge, got everything. It's probably 20, 25 stories. It's out by the Sawgrass. It's in Miami by the airport, out by the big mall that's down there. I can't remember off the top of my head. Um, Guaranteed eight cap. If you buy it, they're guaranteeing 8%. They're going to actually pay for your travel to go down there and look at it. And if you buy it, they're guaranteeing an eight cap.
Wow, that that scares me a little bit. Why are you trying so hard to get me to buy this thing?
I know. So but again, that's just that's South Florida for you, though.
Right. Yeah, that's
So
amazing.
yeah.
Amazing.
Anyway, yeah, but I think South Florida is great. Let's just talk, maybe transition a little bit. So I'm so bullish on Chattanooga. I am incredibly like, I can't think of a better market to be in, from a real estate standpoint. I don't, I cannot find a crack in the armor. And Jimmy will tell you, I'm a doomsdayer because I've lived it and I've seen it. And I personally experienced it, and I just cannot find a crack in the armor here. I mean, I moved from St. Pete, Tampa. One of the main reasons, probably almost 51% of the reason, is like I saw what happened in St. Pete, Tampa market, and the same thing is happening in Chattanooga. Like every indicator points to the same renaissance that's happened there is happening here, and it's going to be off the charts. So I guess what I'm asking you, Charlie, is why are you looking in South Florida when you have diamonds here? What's the thought process there? What's that all about?
Honestly, it's been more about it's been easier to find property to
Uh,
build. But yeah, but I agree. That's actually interesting that I love St. Pete's. My brother used to live a little further south of there, and so every time I'd go visit, we'd end up there at some point 'cause it's such a great little
right.
spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like with Chattanooga, it's such a small area, and they're like the folks that have been here a long time, and so like there's people who've been investing a long time, and I kind of get beat out to the leads a lot. But I mean, Jimmy knows I'm constantly looking at, land here, and I'm under contract on a house here in North Chattanooga. That's the one I was talking about. I'm trying to go back and forth. Should I Airbnb or rent it out? Because it's in such a great area. But yeah, I agree. I think it's more, partly this 1031 with the time frame I've had on it. And then also like, there's just so much land still in Florida, and such a high demand that it's just like, put your finger to the wind and just grab one.
Right. I got you. For sure. Makes sense. Cool.
So what do you like? All your experience, you've seen Tampa, you've seen that market blow up. Like, where do you think the opportunity is for just like a normal real estate investor to take advantage here in Chattanooga?
Yeah. Just from, I would say, this is, and just for a little bit of a context too. So like, I've also got a background as a CCIM. And so anybody in commercial real estate, when you're working with a broker, and I'm going to do my little commercial now, you should be working with a CCIM. And so what I mean by that is when you go into a market and you're looking for an expert to work in that market with from a commercial standpoint, you should be working with a certified commercial investment member. That's a CCIM. It basically is the master's degree or doctorate degree in commercial real estate. The 1% of the 1% of brokers globally have a CCIM. You're required, in order to gain this certification, it's endorsed by the National Association of Realtors. It has a governing body. It is global. In order to have a CCIM designation, you have to have presented an actual portfolio of deals that you've done to a certain amount. It changes. It's like the minimum, I think your portfolio is now is like 25 million in deals. You actually have to present the deals that you did and how you contributed to them, and it gets reviewed by a board. And then you have to take 5 classes plus a half-day exam in order to show that you have proficiency with inside commercial finance and with inside commercial industries. And so when you go into a market, find your local CCIM and work with that person above and all if you're in commercial. And so I went on a tangent and I just forgot. What did you ask me, Jimmy?
Just
what am I looking at?
How to take
what
advantage of the market that's like, you've seen it play out. So like, what's the best way for like just an average real estate investor to take advantage of that?
Yeah. So this goes, then so that's where I was going with it. So like, I've been around all these guys. So the CCIMs, have a huge network. These people are in every market globally, and I talk to them, and everyone always goes back to the same thing: is pick your primary to start with, something that's first principles for you. So if you're going to be an industrial person, then go be an industrial person. If you're going to be that person, go and study the market, know the inventory, drive the properties, get to see them, meet with other property owners, meet with the property managers. Pick your thing, pick your lane, and then go all in and allow that to happen for a certain amount of time. So that's what I would say. If you're starting out as an investor, like Charlie picked single families, that was his thing. That's what he felt comfortable with. That's where he went. To go out and diversify as an investor right up front, I think is a mistake, because you're not skilled enough yet to really understand what happens after you underwrite and close. And so that's what I would say. If you're starting out as an investor, pick your lane and go all in, and become an expert in it, and partner with the other people that are experts in the marketplace. Yeah.
I gotcha.
Love that.
All right. Well, good deal. I got a meeting here in a couple minutes, so let me
Sounds good.
let you. Thanks for coming on, Rob.
Absolutely, man. You guys keep going. It's awesome. Love that you have such a heart for sharing all this stuff. It's great.
Yeah. It's great meeting you, Rob. Well, hopefully let's do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. See you, man.
All right, fellas. See ya.
All right. See you guys.